Recent developments on the young and the restless suggest that Audra Charles, born Cortez, is no longer operating from a place of damage control but from recalibration. After the emotional and professional fallout that nearly dismantled her carefully constructed image, she is rebuilding not loudly, not recklessly, but strategically. What makes this phase different is that her recovery is not rooted in seduction or manipulation, the tools many once accused her of relying on. It is rooted in positioning. And in Genoa City, positioning is everything. Audra's business prospects are stronger than they have ever been, and for someone whose confidence has always been tightly interwoven with her professional status, that matters more than she would ever openly admit. Success is not just income to her, it is validation, it is armor, it is proof that she can survive betrayal, scandal, and public doubt without losing her edge. The offer extended by her closest ally, arguably her only true friend Sally Spectre, changed the trajectory of Audra's narrative. Becoming co-CEO of the merged entity between Newman Media and Abbott Communications was not just a promotion, it was elevation. It placed her at the center of influence rather than at the margins of survival. Even if Spectre Charles Communications or whatever branding compromise they ultimately settle on remains fragile in structure, Audra's individual career standing has never been higher. Zulika's character is no longer clawing upward, she is defending territory at the top, and that psychological shift is significant. There is a difference between chasing power and holding it. Audra is now in the latter category, and that changes how she moves. But if her business instincts are razor-sharp, her romantic instincts remain painfully inconsistent. Audra has always attracted attention. Intelligence, composure, and undeniable presence make her magnetic. Men gravitate toward her not simply because of beauty, but because she radiates control. Yet what fascinates me, and I say this as someone who has watched her arcs carefully, is how she struggles with endings. Audra does not know how to disengage cleanly. She knows how to begin with intensity, how to escalate quickly, how to command emotional space, but closure, that has never been her strength. Instead of resolving relationships, she lets them erode, overlap, or combust, and every unresolved ending leaves residue. That residue eventually shapes the next choice she makes. Interestingly, Sally Spectre shares this flaw, though it manifests differently. Sally's romantic history stretches back to her days on The Bold and the Beautiful, where audiences first met her as ambitious, fiery, and impulsive. In Genoa City, her first quiet infatuation was with Jack Abbott, a man who represented stability and legacy. Nothing materialized there, perhaps because Sally was still discovering who she wanted to be. She then gravitated toward Adam Newman, and that relationship defined her in ways no other has. Mark Grossman's portrayal of Adam gave that connection depth and volatility. Sally did not just fall for Adam, she invested in him emotionally in a way that stripped her usual self-protection. The pregnancy, and the heartbreaking miscarriage of Ava, cemented that bond into something almost irreversible. In my view, Adam remains her truest emotional attachment, even if she intellectually understands he cannot be trusted. His decision to return to Chelsea Lawson fractured something fundamental in Sally. It was not merely betrayal, it was confirmation of her fear that she will always be the temporary choice. Professionally, Sally thrives. She closes deals. She negotiates. She understands branding and leverage. It is no coincidence that Billy Abbott entrusted her with authority over the merged media entities, and that Phyllis Summers ultimately transferred control under that restructuring. Sally has competence that even her rivals acknowledge, but emotionally, she mirrors Audra in one critical way: she cannot close relationships. She can start them with passion, fight for them with sincerity, and defend them with pride, but she cannot seal them with permanence. There is always an open thread, always an unresolved attachment lingering beneath the surface. That shared flaw between Audra and Sally is what makes their partnership so fascinating to me. On paper, they are formidable. Two ambitious women at the top of their professional game, navigating male-dominated power structures with precision. Yet personally, both remain unfinished in subtle ways. They seek validation in love that mirrors the validation they secure in business, and perhaps that is the quiet tragedy beneath their strength. Success does not insulate them from vulnerability, it amplifies it. When you operate at a high level professionally, emotional instability feels even more destabilizing. What I find compelling is how Audra's current career ascent may indirectly force her to confront her romantic pattern. When you no longer need a relationship to reinforce your identity, you begin to see your choices more clearly. Audra, at this stage, has no professional void to fill. The question is whether she will continue repeating cycles of half-finished relationships, or whether she will finally learn the discipline she shows in business and apply it to her personal life. Sally faces similar crossroads. She can negotiate corporate mergers, but can she negotiate emotional permanence? Can she choose someone who chooses her without hesitation? In my opinion, that parallel arc is intentional storytelling. It is not accidental that both women are rising professionally while remaining emotionally unresolved. The contrast creates tension. Viewers may celebrate their boardroom victories, but we also sense that their personal reckoning is overdue. Audra's recovery is impressive. Sally's resilience is admirable. Yet neither has truly confronted the pattern that keeps their romantic lives in flux. And in a city like Genoa City, where personal and professional spheres inevitably collide, and resolved emotional habits eventually spill into business decisions, if Audra continues ascending while ignoring her difficulty with endings, it could bleed into her leadership. If Sally continues chasing emotional closure she never fully achieves, it could undermine her confidence at the very moment she needs clarity. Both women stand at a high point professionally. The real test is not whether they can maintain their companies, but whether they can finally close the chapters that have kept them suspended between independence and longing. And honestly, that internal struggle is far more interesting to me than any corporate merger. On the young and the restless, reinvention is almost a rite of passage, but there comes a point when reinvention begins to look suspiciously like avoidance. Audra Charles has operated under that polished surname long enough for many in Genoa City to forget that she was born Audra Cortez, and maybe that was the point. Cortez carries history, edges, and finished business. Charles feels curated, strategic, corporate. Yet if Audra truly wants to stabilize her future, she may need to do something radical, not by scheming, not by seducing power structures, but by reclaiming her real name. Audra Cortez should take it back, not as a confession of weakness, but as an act of control. One of the most significant reasons Audra remains unsettled, no matter how high she climbs professionally, is fear. Not fear of failure in business, not fear of public scandal in the abstract, but fear of exposure, specifically from Claire Newman. Claire represents a different kind of threat. She is perceptive, principled, and emotionally connected to the Newman legacy that Audra's recent corporate maneuvering has disrupted. Whether Claire actively investigates or circumstances simply bring buried secrets to light, the danger is real. Audra knows there are unresolved shadows in her past, and as long as those shadows exist, they can be weaponized. That kind of vulnerability corrodes confidence from the inside. There are only two real paths forward when someone is living under the weight of a concealed truth: bury it so deeply that it can never surface, or confront it fully and neutralize its power. The first option is seductive but unstable. The second is terrifying but final. If Audra does neither, if she continues pretending that the past can simply remain dormant, she risks something far worse than public embarrassment. She risks prison. And that is not melodrama. It is legal reality. The unresolved incident at the Shadow Room remains the ticking clock beneath Audra's carefully curated life. Holden Novak may ultimately face the heaviest legal consequences if this situation resurfaces. A skilled defense attorney one Audra could easily access through her elevated position as co-CEO of Spectra Charles Communications could construct a compelling narrative. They could argue that Holden did not commit premeditated murder, but rather acted in a chaotic moment, defending Audra from a man who intended to harm her. The legal framing would be crucial. Intent matters, circumstance matters, panic matters. From there, the argument could pivot. Audra, according to that legal logic, might have been coerced into helping dispose of the body under extreme duress. Trauma clouds judgment. Fear distorts decision-making. A lawyer could argue she was not a conspirator but a frightened victim trying to survive a volatile situation. There is a path, legally speaking, for Audra to mitigate or even eliminate her culpability if she chooses transparency before someone else forces it. And this is where Detective James Burrow becomes pivotal. If Audra were to report everything she knows, voluntarily, and cooperate fully, she could reposition herself from suspect to witness. The optics alone would shift dramatically. Instead of appearing as a woman caught in deception, she would appear as someone finally choosing integrity over fear. That decision would not erase the past, but it could reshape how it defines her. Of course, this is easier said than done. Coming forward requires surrendering control, and Audra does not surrender control easily. Silence, for now, gives her the illusion of power. Confession would require faith in the law, in justice, in outcomes she cannot fully script. What complicates everything further is the emotional landscape surrounding her. If Audra decides to protect herself by testifying against Holden, she will not simply be making a legal decision. She will be detonating personal relationships. Loyalty, even fragile loyalty, will shatter. And in Genoa City, reputational damage spreads faster than legal filings. She must calculate not only what is legally safest, but what she can live with afterward. Then there is the question of who, if anyone, might stand beside her if the truth emerges. Between Noah Newman and Kyle Abbott, the answer is not straightforward. Audra's early dynamic with Noah carried warmth, even potential. There was curiosity there, a sense that two people with complicated histories might find balance and shared vulnerability. But that connection cooled rapidly once Noah confronted her about partnering with Sally to operate a portion of the media empire once associated with his grandfather. Loyalty to family runs deep in the Newman bloodline. From Noah's perspective, Audra's business choices felt personal. Add to that his strong bond with Sienna Bacall, and reconciliation seems unlikely in the immediate future, yet unpredictability defines this show. Emotional distance can collapse under the right circumstances. Kyle, on the other hand, represents a different emotional pattern entirely. He has not reunited with Claire, largely because her attention remains fixated on Holden and the unresolved tension orbiting him. Kyle exists in a state of suspension, untethered, reflective, perhaps even lonely. And history matters. Audra's feelings for Kyle have always run deeper than his for her. She invested more. She hoped more. She hurt more. That imbalance has never fully disappeared. Still, timing can alter emotional equations. A chance encounter, an unexpected moment of vulnerability, could reopen communication instantly. The possibility of reconnection between Audra and Kyle feels less blocked than the one with Noah, simply because there is less moral opposition and more unfinished emotional residue. If I step back from the plot mechanics and look at Audra as a character, what fascinates me most is not whether she chooses Noah or Kyle, or whether she reports Holden. It is whether she chooses herself in a way that is honest rather than strategic. Taking back the name Cortez would be symbolic but powerful. It would signal that she is no longer hiding behind a polished identity crafted for corporate survival. It would suggest she is ready to integrate her past instead of compartmentalizing it. And in a world where almost everyone reinvents themselves to escape consequences, that would be bold. Audra's greatest obstacle is not Claire, not Holden, not even the legal system. It is her instinct to control the narrative at all costs. Sometimes strength looks like silence. Other times, it looks like confession. If she continues walking the tightrope between ambition and exposure, the fall will eventually come. But if she confronts the Shadow Room incident directly, cooperates with authorities, and reclaims her original identity without apology, she could emerge more stable than ever. Not flawless, not redeemed in a fairy tale sense, but grounded. As for Noah and Kyle, I honestly believe the answer depends less on their availability and more on Audra's evolution. If she remains in survival mode, she may gravitate toward whoever offers protection or validation. If she resolves her past and regains internal clarity, she might finally choose from a place of strength rather than fear. And that would make any future relationship, whether with a Newman, an Abbott, or someone entirely unexpected, feel earned rather than reactive. In Genoa City, secrets eventually surface. The only question is who controls the timing. Audra Cortez has a narrow window to decide whether she will be exposed or whether she will step forward voluntarily. Taking back her name might be the first sign that she understands that hiding is no longer the smarter move.